This just in, nothing got in past Sergei Bobrovsky, who pitched a 33-save shutout in Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final. First to do that in Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final since Roberto Luongo way back in 2011. And the Florida Panthers got a goal in each period. Connor Verhaeghe scored in the first. Evan Rodriguez scored in the second. And Eetu Luostarinen scored an empty netter as the Florida Panthers win Game 1 3-0 over the Edmonton Oilers. And as we look back on Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final, we say hello to Todd Fuhrman, our Vegas insider, also happens to be a former college netminder, and Pete Blackburn of CBS Sports. All right, guys, look, numbers might not lie, but the stats in this game, they're suspect. Because on paper, it might look like the Oilers dominated in a lot of ways, but watching this game would tell a whole different story. Todd, how did the Panthers manage to take away Edmonton's most obvious playmakers here?
I mean, the bottom line here, Russ, is when Bob plays that way, it doesn't matter who's on the other side. The Oilers could have added Wayne Gretzky, Yari Curry, and Paul Coffey in their prime into the mix, and it didn't appear anything was going to get by the talented Russian netminder, hitting the rewind button to what we saw Game 1 against the New York Rangers, where they were able to set the tone, go out there and establish it. And you mentioned looking at the stats. This doesn't grade out for me as a 3-0 Panthers win. If anything, the Edmonton Oilers extremely unlucky, almost an inverse of what we saw in Game 6, where they were on the flip side of a dominant performance from the Dallas Stars, but were able to skate out of that series with a 2-1 win in the Western Conference Final. So I don't think all is lost by any stretch of the imagination for the Oilers. The one thing I will give the Panthers credit for, though, is Pete knows this is a team that if they have a lead going into the third period, they lock it down as well as anybody. Move that record now to 67-0-4 when that trend takes place.
Yeah, that third period stat is insane, and it proves that the Panthers get stronger as games go on. And Russ, like, I disagree that the stats lie here, and I agree with Todd. You know, I think that the Oilers did control most of that game. You look at, they had zero puck luck. They had a lot of great opportunities. You look at the high danger opportunities, 18-6 in favor of Edmonton. They generated, they just didn't execute and didn't finish. So I wouldn't panic. The one thing that would maybe give me room for concern here is how good Bobrovsky looked in this game, because you know, Stuart Skinner was a non-factor for the Oilers. He certainly wasn't bad, but the discrepancy between these two goaltenders exists in the ceiling, and we saw Sergei Bobrovsky's ceiling in this game, and he can be dominant, and he can take over games, and he can frustrate the heck out of you, and I think that's what happened here in Game 1 for the Oilers.
Look, prior to Game 1, Conn Smythe favorites went McDavid, Barkov, Bobrovsky in that order. Todd, how much did Bobrovsky help his chances in Game 1?
I think after Game 1, Bob becomes the front runner for the Florida Panthers, and rightfully so, given his ability, to Pete's point, to raise his level of play and have a ceiling that I don't think Stuart Skinner can match, despite how we saw him play in one game against the LA Kings and how he performed in that aforementioned Game 6 win against the Dallas Stars. So it's Bob's award, at least after Game 1. But if the Florida Panthers are going to play this way and expect to beat a team as offensively gifted as the Edmonton Oilers, they're going to be dancing on the razor's edge. You look at Edmonton, they had power play opportunities that came up empty-handed, but they were able to generate chances. Bob was seeing pucks, whether they were deflected. The one thing that does surprise me a little bit, Russ, when you go back and watch some of the scoring chances for the Oilers, I'm not sure if it was the scouting report they didn't get a memo on or it was by design. They didn't look to try and shoot high glove or high blocker, an area where we know Bobrovsky has been vulnerable, not just this regular season, but throughout his career. You saw Barclay Goodrow last round for the New York Rangers have a lot of success going to that spot. So I think Coach Knobloch has a lot of scouting and coaching to try and impart on his boys. But again, if you're the Oilers, you haven't been on a stage this large, other than if you're Corey Perry. I don't think there's any reason to panic. Other than one concern I do have for Edmonton, and it's a question of what they're going to do with their defensive pairings. Darnell Nurse and Cody Ceci continue to be the weak link on that blue line, and I think that only gets exacerbated the longer this series goes with that heavy forecheck for Florida.
100% agree. I don't think that you can run back Nurse Cece. I wouldn't have gone back to it for this game one. We've had too much tape on those two being together and not working well. So I would not go back to that pairing. It's a good point you make, too, about the going low on Bobrovsky, because the Oilers were 0 for 3 on breakaways in this game, and in at least 2 of them, they kept the puck on the ground and tried to go pad side on Bobrovsky, when you're right, there is tape on Bobrovsky being not great on the glove side. So I would lift the puck, look to lift the puck, and unfortunately for Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, he had an unbelievable opportunity on the power play in which he lifted the puck a bit too much. He sailed it. But once again, the Oilers did a good job of getting those opportunities and generating. They just got to be better in the execution, and I think they will be. This is not a team that is going to get shut out probably again in this series, I would imagine.
Yeah, finishing isn't something that we would expect to be critiquing the Oilers about at this point with the players that they have. As we look to Game 2, which is Monday night back in Florida, Greg, what's one of the big storylines that you'll be following there?
Yeah, I just think that the Oilers need to break through here, and I think that they do it. And so, I would expect a big bounce back effort in Game 2. Again, this is not a team that I think is going to roll over after losing a Game 1 that they probably deserve to win. I checked the Money Puck deserve to win a meter just for fun after this game. It had the Oilers at 92% on a deserve to win. So that's pretty incredible, but I don't think that Edmonton is one of those teams that's going to roll over and going to be discouraged by the result here in Game 1. They've shown a lot of resolve throughout this season, throughout these playoffs. This is a team that can bounce back, and I will expect them to bounce back in Game 2.
All right, so according to the deserve to win-o-meter, the Florida Panthers might have stolen Game 1, but Todd Fuhrman, from a wagering perspective, what's a specific wager that maybe we don't know the lines exactly right now because they're going to move, but what's something that you're looking forward to seeing in Game 2?
Yeah, numbers have popped a little bit. You're looking at Florida kind of opening for Game 2, more or less, where they closed for Game 1, and a series price where Florida was right around minus $1.40 coming into the start, now ballooning out of that minus 260 range. Look, everything that Pete says, I'll echo a lot of those same sentiments. I think the Oilers coming into this series, if you could have told them that a split was on the table down there in Sunrise, they would have been more than happy to be able to sign off on that. And I don't think they did anything in this game that discourages them from being able to accomplish that feat. So when I look at the price tag here, I think Florida is a little bit overvalued. We'll see where the market moves. My buy point is probably going to be right around plus 126 on the Oilers if it gets there. So we need a little bit of wiggle room. But I think for folks that wanted to make a compelling case for the team having a little bit more star power in the Oilers, plus 220 will give you a better series number here. But I think the longer this series goes, Florida can impose their will physically. And the one thing we've seen from the Panthers in their road to getting to the Stanley Cup final, they've already had to solve Andrei Vasilevsky in round 1. They got through a white-hot Jeremy Swayman in round 2 and were able to figure things out against Igor Shesterkin, who was the Rangers' best player in that Eastern Conference final. So going up against Stuart Skinner is not going to intimidate them at all. And the last thing that the Oilers can afford is to try and play a ton of low-scoring games if they're going to get in these one-goal situations, knowing that Bob is probably going to get the nod over Stuart Skinner in the final 10 minutes of each of these games.
Sergei Bobrovsky, the story of Game 1 with a 33-save shutout and a 3-0 win for the Florida Panthers. That is Pete Blackburn of CBS Sports and our Vegas insider, Todd Fuhrman. Gentlemen, thank you so very much. And Game 2 will take us right back to Sunrise, Florida on Monday night before things shift all the way to Calgary, Alberta, Canada on Thursday. And on Saturday as well, the longest distance between two Stanley Cup final teams, the Florida Panthers and Edmonton Oilers. Florida leads the best of 7 game series, 1-0. When we come back, we'll hear from the major participants' press conferences after the Panthers' 3-0 Game 1 win over the Oilers in the Stanley Cup Finals. Stick around.